5 years ago, the world watched a billionaire bury his wife. They said it was a sudden illness, a tragedy that shook the elite halls of Seattle. My husband, Bennett Sterling, threw the first handful of dirt on my casket, promising to love me even in death. But as the dirt hit the lid of my coffin, I wasn't there. My mother-in-law thought $1 million bribe could buy a soul. She thought she had erased me, my story, and my unworthy blood from her family's legacy forever. A very warm welcome to the Mr. James Family Channel. We bring you stories that touch the expose the truth and celebrate the strength of the human spirit. If you believe that justice should always prevail over power, please hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss a single second of this journey. Stick with us until the very end, because I promise you, by the time the final truth is revealed, you won't be able to stop your tears. This is the story of Elara's return. Let's begin. The rain hammered against the floor, to ceiling windows of Sterling Mansion like bullets of ice. Elara stood in the grand kitchen, her brown fingers trembling as she stirred the evening's rosemary chicken. The marble countertops gleamed under crystal chandeliers, cold and perfect like everything else in this house. She'd lived here for 2 years as Miss Bennett Sterling, but the mansion had never once felt like home. It felt like a mausoleum. You missed a spot on the silver, Elara. Beatrice Sterling's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade dipped in venom. The matriarch swept in wearing Chanel and cruelty in equal measure. Her grey eyes raked over Elara with the same disgust one might reserve for gum stuck to an expensive shoe. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling. I'll fix it right away." "Of course you will." Beatrice's lips curled. "That's all you're good for, isn't it? Cleaning up after your betters." Elara bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper. 2 years of this. 2 years of being treated like the help in her own home. Bennett always promised things would change. They never did. Chef Lorenzo entered through the service door, his weathered Italian face creasing with concern as he saw Elara's expression. "Signora Elara, you look pale." Sit. I finished the chicken. I'm fine, Lorenzo." Really? But she wasn't fine. Her stomach had been queasy for weeks. This morning, she'd finally taken the test. 2 pink lines that changed everything. She was carrying Bennett's child. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 7. Bennett would be home soon from Sterling Tech. Tonight, she would tell him. Tonight, everything would be different. A baby would make them a real family. Even Beatrice couldn't poison that. Could she? "Mrs. Sterling," Elara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "May I speak with you privately?" Beatrice's eyebrow arched with theatrical disdain. How formal. Has the maid learned manners? They moved to the sunroom, where orchids bloomed in silent judgment. Rain streaked the glass walls. Elara's heart thundered against her ribs. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like smoke. Beatrice's face transformed. For one terrible second, pure rage flashed across her features before she smoothed it into something resembling joy. But Elara had seen it. That flash of hatred, raw and murderous. Pregnant. Beatrice repeated the word like a curse. "With my son's child." "Yes. I'm 12 weeks along. I wanted to tell you first, before Bennett, because I thought maybe this could be a fresh start for us. A grandchild." "Grandchild?" Beatrice laughed, the sound hollow and wrong. How delightful. She crossed to a cabinet and pulled out a crystal decanter filled with amber liquid. But instead of pouring brandy, she retrieved a small porcelain teapot painted with delicate blue flowers. We must celebrate properly. I have just the thing. Beatrice moved with sudden energy, pulling herbs from a locked drawer Elara had never seen opened. An old family recipe. My grandmother made it for my mother when she carried me. It ensures a strong, healthy Sterling hair. Something cold slithered down Elara's spine. That's very kind. But I shouldn't drink anything. Nonsense. It's herbal. Perfectly safe. Beatrice's smile didn't reach her eyes. I insist. She brewed the tea with practiced efficiency, humming under her breath. The steam rising from the pot smelled like licorice and something darker. Something that reminded Elara of hospitals and funeral homes. Drink. All of it. For the baby. Elara took the delicate cup. The liquid inside was murky brown, flecked with sediment. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but Beatrice was watching with such intensity that fear won over caution. She lifted the cup to her lips. Chef Lorenzo appeared in the doorway, his face pale. Signora Beatrice, the kitchen phone. Is emergency, your sister from Boston. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. My sister is in Paris. She say is urgent. About the will. For a moment, Beatrice hesitated. Then she set down her own cup with deliberate precision. This will only take a moment. Don't touch that tea, Elara. I want to watch you drink every drop. She swept from the room. Lorenzo moved with surprising speed for a man in his 70s. He snatched the cup from Elara's hands and poured the contents into an orchid pot. Don't drink that. His voice was urgent, barely controlled. I saw what she put in there, monk should. Wolfsbane. Enough to stop a horse's heart. Elara's blood turned to ice water. What? She's trying to kill you, child. Kill you and the baby both. No. No, you're wrong. She wouldn't. I've worked for the Sterlings for 40 years. I know what Beatrice is capable of. His gnarled hands gripped her shoulders. That woman views you as a stain on her precious bloodline. A brown-skinned girl carrying the Sterling hair. She'd rather see you dead. Tears burned Elara's eyes. Bennett would never allow. Bennett is blind where his mother is concerned. He always has been. Footsteps in the hall. Beatrice returning. Lorenzo grabbed a pitcher of water and refilled the teacup, adding a splash of cooking brandy for color. He pressed it into Elara's shaking hands just as Beatrice reappeared. False alarm, Beatrice said, her voice tight with irritation. Nunk. Elara raised the cup of water and brandy to her lips, maintaining eye contact with the woman who'd just tried to murder her. The liquid was tasteless. Safe. She drained it. Beatrice's smile was triumphant. Excellent. You'll feel the effects within the hour. The tea works very quickly. What effects? Elara asked, her voice hollow. Clarity, my dear. Perfect clarity about your place in this family. The front door opened. Bennett's voice called out from the foyer. I'm home. Where is everyone? He appeared in the doorway, still in his tailored suit, raindrops glistening in his dark hair. At 35, Bennett Sterling was everything the tabloids said: brilliant, handsome, ruthlessly successful. But when he looked at Elara, something softened in his face. There's my beautiful wife. He crossed to her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? She's perfect. Beatrice interjected smoothly. We were just having tea. Girl talk. Bennett's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning. Emergency at the office. The Tokyo deal is falling apart. I need to conference in with the team. But Bennett? Elara started. I'm sorry, darling. This can't wait. We're talking about a $2 billion acquisition. He was already moving toward his study. Don't wait up. This could take hours. And just like that, he was gone. Elara stood alone in the sunroom with her would-be murderer and the chef who'd saved her life. The orchid in the pot where Lorenzo had poured the poison was already beginning to wilt, its white petals turning brown at the edges. You should rest, dear, Beatrice said, her voice dripping with false concern. Growing a baby is exhausting work. I'll have dinner sent to your room. The threat was clear. If the tea didn't work, there would be other attempts. Elara climbed the sweeping staircase to the master bedroom, her mind racing. She had to tell Bennett, had to make him see what his mother truly was. But would he believe her? In 2 years of marriage, he'd never once taken her side over Beatrice's. She locked the bedroom door and pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over Bennett's number. Before she could call, a text message appeared. From Lorenzo. Pack a bag. Hide it. Be ready to run. This is not over. Elara looked around the gilded prison of her bedroom. The silk sheets. The designer clothes Bennett bought her. The life she'd thought she wanted. It was all worthless if she was dead. Outside, thunder rolled across Seattle's skyline. The storm was just beginning. In the kitchen below, Beatrice Sterling stood at the window, watching rain assault the city. In her hand was a small vial of clear liquid, the real poison. The monkshood had been plan A. She had 7 more plans. And all of them ended with Elara in the ground. Elara woke to the sensation of drowning on dry land. Her lungs seized, refusing to expand. She clawed at her throat, trying to pull air through a passage that felt like it was closing from the inside. The bedroom spun in sickening circles. The water. The dinner Lorenzo warned her not to eat. She'd been so careful. She'd poured the soup down the bathroom sink, crumbled the bread into the toilet. She'd only drunk from the sealed bottle of water in the nightstand. But Beatrice was smarter than that. Elara tried to scream for Bennett, but only a strangled wheeze escaped. Her phone. Where was her phone? She'd had it when she went to bed. She fumbled across the nightstand, knocking over a lamp that shattered against the hardwood floor. The phone was gone. Darkness crept around the edges of her vision. Her fingers were going numb. The baby. Oh God, the baby. She rolled off the bed and hit the floor hard. Pain shot through her shoulder, but it was distant, muted. Everything was becoming muted. She crawled toward the bedroom door, each movement an agony of suffocation. The door was locked from the outside. Panic exploded in her chest. She pounded on the wood with fists that felt like they belonged to someone else. No sound came out. Her lungs were stone. In the hallway, she heard footsteps. Bennett's voice, groggy with sleep. What was that noise? Just the storm, dear. Beatrice's voice, saccharine sweet. Go back to bed. It sounded like it came from our room. Elara is sleeping soundly. I checked on her an hour ago. You know how these old houses settle in the rain. Elara slammed her body against the door. Once. Twice the world tilted sideways. Mother, I should check. Bennett Sterling, you have the most important presentation of your life in 6 hours. The board members are flying in from 5 continents. You need rest. A long pause. Elara could imagine Bennett standing there in his silk pajamas, torn between duty to his company and his wife. The company won. It always did. You're right. Wake me at 5. His footsteps retreated down the hall. Elara collapsed against the door, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her vision was tunneling, the world shrinking to a pinpoint of light. The baby. She had to save the baby. She crawled toward the window, thinking maybe she could break the glass, signal for help. But they were 3 stories up, and the Sterling mansion sat on 5 acres of private land. No neighbors. No witnesses. Perfect for murder. Her body was shutting down. She could feel it happening, system by system. First the extremities going cold, then the trembling starting, then her heart beginning to race and stutter. This was death. This was what dying felt like. Through the bedroom wall, she heard Beatrice's voice, muffled but clear. Yes, I gave her the full dose this time. Mixed it in the water bottle cap. She'll be dead within the hour. No, Bennett suspects nothing. Of course I'll act devastated. The funeral will be closed casket, obviously. We can't have people seeing what the poison does to the body. Elara's heart cracked open with the realization that Bennett might never know the truth. He would grieve, but he would believe his mother's lies, and their child would die before taking a first breath. No, she wouldn't let that happen. With the last of her strength, Elara pulled herself to the antique vanity. Her reflection in the mirror was a horror show, lips turning blue, eyes bloodshot, skin ashen. She looked like a corpse already. She grabbed a lipstick, the red one Bennett had given her for their anniversary, and wrote on the mirror in shaking letters, Beatrice, peace you need me, SAVTHEBY. The lipstick clattered from her fingers. The floor rushed up to meet her face. Somewhere in the distance, she heard a door slamming, running footsteps. Signor Elara! Lorenzo's voice cracked with fear. Madre di Dio. What has she done? Strong hands rolled her onto her back. Lorenzo's weathered face swam above her, streaked with tears. The phones, Elara managed to whisper. Cut. I know, child. I know. He pulled her into his arms, cradling her like the daughter he'd never had. I'm getting you out of here. Hold on. He was 73 years old, but adrenaline made him strong. He lifted Elara and carried her out of the bedroom. The hallway was dark, silent. Too silent. Beatrice stepped out of the shadows at the top of the stairs. Lorenzo. Put her down. The chef froze. I said put her down. Beatrice held a small revolver, the kind wealthy women kept in their nightstands. Her hand was steady. She's having a medical episode. I've called for an ambulance. They'll be here soon. You're a liar, Lorenzo spat. You cut the phone lines. I checked every line in the house. Beatrice's smile was cold enough to frost glass. Did you? How thorough. But you forgot one thing, old man. I have a cell phone. She held it up. The screen was dark, dead. Oops. Battery must have died. How unfortunate. You won't get away with this, Lorenzo said, but his voice shook. He was a chef, not a fighter. And Beatrice was a woman who'd do anything to protect her empire. I already have. Beatrice cocked the gun. Now put her down and walk away. This doesn't concern you. She's dying in my arms. Yes, tragic, isn't it? A young woman, so far from home, overdosing on prescription pills. Depression is such a terrible thing. Beatrice's eyes glittered with malice. That's what the autopsy will say. That's what Bennett will believe. Elara's vision was fading. She could barely hear them anymore. The world was going grey and soft. Lorenzo's chest heaved with a sob. "Forgive me, Signora." He turned and ran. Not toward the front door, where Beatrice could shoot him. Not toward the phones that didn't work. He ran toward the service entrance, through the kitchen, out into the screaming rain. Beatrice fired. The bullet shattered a Tiffany lamp. But Lorenzo was already gone, carrying Elara's dying body into the storm. Behind them, Bennett Sterling stood in her mansion and smiled. Even if the old fool got her to a hospital, she'd already planned for that. The doctor was waiting, and he'd been paid very well to ensure Elara never woke up. The rain was biblical. Lorenzo ran through the darkness, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might explode. Elara hung limp in his arms, her breathing shallow and wet. She was drowning from the inside. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles away. He'd never make it in time. He needed a phone. Now, through the storm, he saw a light. The groundskeeper's cottage, tucked in the far corner of the estate. Old Samuel had worked for the Sterlings, even longer than Lorenzo. He'd have a phone. Lorenzo kicked the door open without knocking. Samuel looked up from his recliner, eyes widening at the sight before him. "Mother Mary, what happened?" "Call 911. Lorenzo laid Elara on the threadbare couch. "Now." Samuel grabbed his phone with shaking hands and dialed. Lorenzo pressed his ear to Elara's chest. Her heartbeat was erratic, skipping beats like a damaged record. 911. "What's your emergency?" "We need an ambulance at Sterling Mansion." "Woman poisoned. Not breathing right. Pregnant." "Address." Samuel rattled it off while Lorenzo held Elara's hand, whispering prayers in Italian. Her eyes flickered open for just a second. "The baby," she breathed. "Save." Then she was gone, unconscious. "Ambulance is 7 minutes out," Samuel said. "They are sending the trauma unit." Lorenzo looked at the man who'd trimmed the Sterling hedges for 40 years. "Samuel, when they ask what happened, you tell them the truth. You tell them Beatrice Sterling did this." "Lorenzo, I can't." "You can and you will. I'm an old man. I got nothing to lose. But that girl is 20, 8 years old with a baby in her belly. You tell the truth or spend the rest of your life knowing you helped murder her." Samuel's face crumpled. He nodded. The longest 7 minutes of Lorenzo's life crawled past. He'd worked in kitchens for 50 years, seen burns and cuts, and once a sauce chef who'd severed 3 fingers with a cleaver. But he'd never seen anything like this. Elara's body was shutting down. Her lips had gone from blue to purple. Her fingers were ice. Sirens split the night. The ambulance screamed up the long drive. Red and white lights painting the rain in violent colors. 3 paramedics burst through the door. "Step back, sir. Let us work." They swarmed over Elara with practiced efficiency. IV lines, oxygen mask, cardiac monitor that beeped in angry, irregular patterns. Pulse is thready. BP 70/40. Respiratory distress, suspected poisoning. The lead paramedic looked at Lorenzo. "What did she ingest?" "Monkshud. Wolfspen. In her water. Jesus." "Get her loaded. We're taking her to Sacred Heart. Radio ahead for Dr. Vance. If anyone can save her, it's him." They strapped Elara to the gurney and ran for the ambulance. Lorenzo climbed in behind them. "Sir, family only." "I'm her family," Lorenzo growled. "More than any of those monsters in that house." The paramedic didn't argue. The ambulance tore through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, sirens howling. In the back, Elara convulsed once, her body arching off the gurney. Lam screamed.
She's coding! Get me the paddles! No pulse! Clear!
Electricity jolted through Elara's body. Once, twice, the monitor flatlined. Lorenzo watched the light leave her face and knew he was watching an angel die. Then, miracle of miracles. A single beep, another, we got her back. Pulse is weak but present. How far to Sacred Heart? 2 minutes. They burst through the emergency room doors at 3:47 a.m. The trauma team was waiting, led by a tall man in surgical scrubs with iron, grey hair, and the steady hands of someone who'd saved 1,000 lives. Dr. Julian Vance took one look at Elara and barked orders. Get her to OR3. Type and cross for 6 units. Call toxicology. I want a full Wolfsbane protocol. They disappeared behind swinging doors. Lorenzo stood alone in the waiting room, soaked to the bone, praying to a god he wasn't sure was listening. 20 minutes later, a black town car pulled up to the emergency entrance. Beatrice Sterling emerged, perfectly coiffed despite the hour. She wore dye and diamonds. Her face was a mask of maternal concern. She found Lorenzo in the waiting room and had the audacity to embrace him. Thank God you got her here in time, she said loud enough for the nurses to hear. I was so worried when I found her. These mental health episodes, they come out of nowhere. Lorenzo shoved her away. You did this. You poisoned her. The poor dear poisoned herself, Beatrice said smoothly. I found the empty pill bottles in her bathroom. So tragic. The stress of the pregnancy must have triggered a breakdown. Liar. A security guard stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. Beatrice touched the guard's arm. It's all right. Lorenzo is family. He's just upset. We all are. She turned back to Lorenzo, and her mask slipped for just a second. Her eyes were cold as a snake's. The girl is dying, old man. And when she does, Bennett will grieve and move on. This sordid chapter will close. The Sterling bloodline will remain pure. God will judge you, Lorenzo whispered. God and I have an understanding. Beatrice checked her watch. Now I need to speak with the surgeon. Excuse me? She walked toward the surgical wing like she owned it. Because in a way, she did. The Sterling name opened every door in Seattle. Behind a closed door, Beatrice found Dr. Julian Vance scrubbing his hands at a sink. He was 58, divorced, with 2 kids in college and a mortgage that kept him up at night. Dr. Vance. A word. He turned, taking in Beatrice Sterling with the wary eyes of a man who knew trouble when he saw it. Mrs. Sterling, I'm about to operate on your daughter-in-law. She's critical. I understand. Beatrice pulled a checkbook from her purse, which is why I want to ensure she receives the very best care. She wrote numbers. Many numbers. $1 million. She tore off the check and held it up so Dr. Vance could see it clearly. This is for you. Your personal account. Consider it a donation for your excellent work. Dr. Vance stared at the check. $1 million. That was his mortgage paid off. His kids' tuition covered. Early retirement. I don't understand, he said carefully. Beatrice stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. My daughter-in-law is very sick. The poison has done terrible damage. I suspect she won't survive the surgery, and if she does, the brain damage will be severe. Vegetative state. We won't know that until... Doctor. Beatrice's eyes hardened. My son loves that girl. If she survives as a shell of herself, it will destroy him. The kinder thing, the merciful thing, would be to let her go peacefully. Do you understand? Doctor. Vance understood perfectly. This woman was asking him to commit murder. He looked at the check again. $1 million. Then he looked through the window of the operating room, where Elara lay dying on a table. Her brown skin ashen, her pregnant belly slightly rounded. Somewhere in that belly was a baby. A baby that would die if its mother died. Dr. Julian Vance had taken an oath. First, do no harm. But he'd also taken out loans, made promises to his kids, dreamed of a life without the crushing weight of debt. For 10 terrible seconds, he stood at a crossroads. I'll do my best, he said finally. Beatrice smiled and pressed the check into his palm. I knew I could count on you. She left him there, holding blood money, while inside the OR, a young woman's heart continued to beat. Barely, Doctor. Vance looked at the check one more time. Then he slipped it into his pocket, scrubbed his hands until they were raw, and walked into the operating room where Elara waited. He had a choice to make, and 3 hours to make it. Doctor. Julian Vance had been a surgeon for 32 years. He'd saved politicians, criminals, saints, and sinners. He'd held beating hearts in his hands. He'd pronounced time of death on people who'd begged him for one more minute of life. But he'd never stood over a patient with $1 million bribe in his pocket. Elara lay on the table, her body ravaged by poison. Monitors beeped their warnings. The nurses moved with quiet efficiency, prepping instruments, adjusting IV drips. Scalpel, Dr. Vance said. The surgery was supposed to be straightforward. Pump her stomach. Administer activated charcoal. Push the antidote for wolfsbane poisoning. Support her failing organs until her body could fight back. But Beatrice Sterling wanted her dead. And Dr. Vance held a check that could change his life. He made the first incision. Suction. Blood welled up. He worked methodically, his hands steady even as his mind raced. He could do it. End her life with something subtle. A nick in the wrong artery. An air bubble in the IV. She was so close to death already that no one would question it. Doctor, her BP is dropping. 60/40. Push another unit. Keep her volume up. He worked deeper, finding the source of the internal bleeding, where the poison had eaten through her stomach lining. This was bad. Worse than he'd expected. She's not going to make it. The assisting surgeon murmured, Doctor. Vance's hand paused over Elara's open abdomen. She's not going to make it. Those words made everything easier. If she was dying anyway, he wasn't really killing her. He was just letting nature take its course. That wasn't murder. That was mercy. He could almost believe it. Dr. Vance. A young nurse touched his arm. Her abdomen is moving. He looked down. Under the layers of damaged tissue, he saw it. A flutter. Small, but unmistakable. The baby. Despite everything, despite the poison coursing through its mother's system, the tiny life was fighting. 12 weeks old and already a survivor, Dr. Vance had delivered hundreds of babies. He'd held them as they took their first breaths. He'd watched fathers cry with joy. He'd seen mothers look at their newborns like they'd just been handed the universe. This baby deserved that chance. Get me fetal monitoring now. The nurses scrambled. Within seconds, a new sound filled the OR. Thump, 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 thump. Fast and strong, the baby's heartbeat. Dr. Vance stood there, scalpel in hand, and felt something crack open inside his chest. He'd become a doctor because He'd watched his mother die of cancer when he was 17. He'd stood by her hospital bed, helpless, while she wasted away. He'd sworn then that he would save people, that he would fight death with everything he had. When had he forgotten that oath? When had he become the kind of man who could be bought? "Sir, we need to make a decision. She's critical." "Doctor." Vance looked at the team around him. Nurses who'd worked with him for years. Residents who trusted his judgment. They were all watching, waiting for him to save a life. The way he'd done 1,000 times before. "We're not giving," he said. His voice was steel. "I don't care how bad it looks. We fight for her. We fight for that baby. Do you understand?" They understood. For the next 2 hours, Doctor Julian Vance waged war against death. He repaired torn tissue, transfused blood, pushed antidotes, and activated charcoal. He worked with the fierce concentration of a man trying to redeem his soul. At 6:15 a.m., Elara's heart stopped. No, we're not done." He started compressions, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Doctor, she's been down for 3 minutes. I don't care." Again. "Clear!" The paddles shocked her back to life. Her heart stuttered, caught, found its rhythm. At 6:47 a.m., her blood pressure stabilized. At 72 a.m., the fetal heartbeat grew stronger. At 7:30 a.m., Dr. Vance closed the last suture and stepped back from the table. "She's going to make it," he said, and his voice broke on the last word. The surgical team erupted in quiet celebration. This was why they'd become medical professionals. These moments when death blinked first. Dr. Vance pulled off his gloves and walked into the hallway. Beatrice Sterling was waiting, seated in a leather chair like a queen on a throne. She stood as he approached. "Well, Doctor." Vance looked at this woman who'd tried to purchase murder. This woman who saw human life as something to be managed and discarded. This woman who'd handed him $1 million to betray everything he believed in. And he made a choice. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling." His face was grim, deliberately so. "We did everything we could. She didn't make it." Beatrice's eyes widened. "She's dead, yes. Time of death, 7:33 a.m. For a fraction of a second, pure triumph flashed across Beatrice's face before she smoothed it into grief. "Oh my God, my poor son. Does he know?" "Not yet. I thought you'd want to tell him yourself." Of course. Of course." Beatrice pressed a hand to her chest. "This is devastating." "What about the body?" "That's the difficult part." Dr. Vance lowered his voice. "The poison did catastrophic damage. The body is severely distorted. I would strongly recommend a closed casket service." "I see. In fact, I think it would be traumatic for Mr. Sterling to view his wife in this condition. The poison causes significant tissue degradation. She's not recognizable." Beatrice nodded slowly. "Then we'll seal the casket immediately. For Bennett's sake. I think that's wise." "Thank you, Doctor. You've been extraordinarily helpful." Beatrice's hand drifted to her purse, where the checkbook waited. "That donation I mentioned. Keep it," Dr. Vance said. "Losing a patient is payment enough." He walked away before she could respond. Inside the OR, nurses were preparing to move Elara to recovery. She was alive. Unconscious, fighting, but alive. "Doctor." Vance pulled his head nurse aside. "Listen carefully. What I'm about to ask you to do could cost us both our careers." Her eyes widened. "What do you need?" "There's a Jane Doe in the morgue. Car accident victim from last night. No family, no identification. Understanding dawned. Doctor, you can't? I just told Beatrice Sterling her daughter-in-law is dead. In 4 hours, I'm going to deliver a sealed casket to Sterling Mansion. Do you understand what I'm saying? The nurse looked through the window at Elara. She'll come after you. Beatrice Sterling destroys anyone who crosses her. I know. You'll lose your medical license. Maybe go to prison. I know that too. The nurse was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened her spine. What do you need me to do? Over the next 3 hours, Dr. Julian Vance committed the most elaborate deception of his career. The Jane Doe was prepared and sealed in a casket. Paperwork was forged. Death certificates were signed. At 11:00 a.m., Bennett Sterling arrived at the hospital, his face haggard with shock and grief. Where is she? I want to see my wife. Mr. Sterling. Doctor. Vance gripped his shoulder. I'm so deeply sorry. We did everything possible, but the poison had caused too much damage. She passed at 7:33 this morning. Bennett's knees buckled. No, that's not possible. She was fine yesterday. We were going to have a baby. I know, son. I know. I want to see her. I don't recommend it. The poison caused significant trauma to the body. I think you should remember her as she was.
I want to see my wife.
Dr. Vance had prepared for this. He led Bennett to a viewing room where the sealed casket waited. Mr. Sterling, if you open that casket, you'll have nightmares for the rest of your life. Trust me. I've been doing this for 30 years. Sometimes love means letting go without looking back. Bennett collapsed against the casket, sobbing. I should have been there. I should have protected her. There was nothing you could have done. That, at least, was true. The funeral was held the next morning, a cold, grey Seattle day. Rain, always rain. Beatrice Sterling wore black Chanel and diamonds that caught the light like frozen tears. Bennett stood at the graveside, destroyed. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years overnight. The sealed casket was lowered into the ground. Beatrice placed a single white rose on top. Rest in peace, dear, she murmured, and smiled. Bennett never saw the smile. He was too busy dying inside, 300 miles away, in a private recovery room at a clinic. Dr. Vance owned under a different name. Elara opened her eyes for the first time in 3 days. Where? Her voice was a rasp. Where am I? The nurse leaned over her. Safe, you're safe now. My baby, still with you, still fighting. Elara's hand moved to her stomach. Through the bandages and pain, she felt that flutter. That stubborn, beautiful flutter. Tears streamed down her face. In Seattle, they were burying her in a casket filled with a stranger. But she was alive. And she would make them all pay. Chicago's winter wind cut like broken glass. Elara pulled her coat tighter as she walked from the bus stop to the 2-bedroom apartment she shared with Mrs. Chen, an 80-year-old widow who'd taken them in when they had nowhere else to go. Leo ran ahead, his small backpack bouncing. Mama, can we have hot chocolate? If you finish your homework first. That's what you always say. And you always get your hot chocolate, don't you? He grinned. 5 years old with Bennett's dark eyes and her golden, brown skin. A beautiful blend of the love they'd once shared before everything turned to poison. Before she'd been buried alive, the apartment was small but warm. Mrs. Chen sat in her armchair, watching Korean dramas and knitting scarves she sold at the church bazaar. You work too hard, the old woman said in Mandarin, accented English. 2 jobs. Never sleep. Manage. Elara kissed her wrinkled cheek. Thank you for watching, Leo. He's a good boy. Too smart. Like his mama. If only she knew the half of it. After Elara had woken up in Dr. Vance's secret clinic, he'd laid out the reality with brutal honesty. Beatrice Sterling had resources, connections, and a pathological need to eliminate threats. If Elara returned to Seattle, she'd be dead within a week. The only way to survive was to disappear. Dr. Vance had given her $20,000, money from his savings. Not the bribe, and a new identity. Sarah Mitchell. Single mother. No ties to Seattle's elite. She'd taken that money and Leo, born 2 weeks premature but healthy, stubborn, perfect, and run to Chicago. Far enough from Seattle to vanish. Close enough that she could watch Bennett's empire from the shadows. And plan. By day, she worked as a medical billing specialist at a community health clinic. By night, she did freelance tech consulting under another name entirely, E.L. Winters. Because Elara hadn't just survived, she'd evolved. In those first terrible months after Leo's birth, while her body healed and her heart hardened, she'd taught herself coding, data analysis, systems architecture. She'd devoured online courses, certifications, anything that would make her valuable in the tech world. The same world Bennett dominated, Sterling Tech. The company he'd built into a $2 billion empire. The company that was about to go public in the biggest tech IPO in 5 years. Elara had been watching. Waiting. Mama, I'm hungry. Leo tugged her sleeve. All right, baby. Let me make dinner. She moved through the small kitchen with practiced efficiency. Spaghetti, garlic bread, salad. Simple food that stretched their tight budget. But Leo never complained. He was used to their life. Didn't know there was another way to live. He didn't know his father was a billionaire. He didn't know his grandmother had tried to murder his mother. He didn't know that every night, while he slept, Elara sat at her second-hand laptop and built the weapon that would destroy the Sterling Empire. Tell me the story, Leo said through a mouthful of pasta. Which story? About the prince who forgot the princess. Elara's heart clenched. She'd never told Leo about Bennett directly. But she'd created a fairy tale, a sanitized version where the handsome prince married a kind girl, then forgot her when the evil queen cast a spell. Once upon a time, she began, there was a prince who ruled a kingdom of glass and technology. Like computers. Exactly like computers. And he met a girl with a golden voice who made him laugh. Like you, Mama. You have a pretty voice. Thank you, baby. So the prince and the girl got married. And they were going to have a little prince. But the queen, the prince's mother, didn't want the girl in their kingdom because she was mean. Very mean. So the queen made the girl disappear. And the prince thought she was gone forever. He never knew about the little prince she was carrying. Leo's eyes were heavy. This story always made him sleepy. But Mama, in the real story, doesn't the princess come back? Doesn't she show everyone the truth? Yes, sweetheart. In the real story, the princess comes back. And when she does, the whole kingdom sees what the evil queen really is. Win. Soon, she thought. Very soon. In time, she said softly. Now sleep. She carried him to bed, tucking him under blankets decorated with dinosaurs. He looked so much like Bennett it physically hurt. did Bennett think of her? Did he visit her fake grave? Or had Beatrice's lies buried the memory of their love as thoroughly as they'd buried that stranger's body? Elara returned to her laptop. On screen, Sterling Tech's IPO documents. Public filings she'd analyzed until she knew them better than Bennett did. Tomorrow, Sterling Tech was hosting its pre-IPO market event. A massive spectacle in Seattle's Pike Place market. Bennett would stand on a stage in front of thousands, announcing Sterling Tech's vision for the future. Press from around the world would attend. Investors, analysts, anyone who mattered in tech. It was the perfect stage for the truth. Elara opened a secure file labeled Evidence. Inside, Dr. Vance's sworn testimony, recorded and notarized. The $1 million check Beatrice had written. Photographed front and back. Medical records showing wolfsbane poisoning. Video footage Dr. Vance had secretly recorded in the OR, explaining what he'd been asked to do. Witness statements from Chef Lorenzo and Samuel the groundskeeper. Beatrice's phone records from the night of the poisoning, proving she'd disabled the landlines. 5 years of preparation. 5 years of building an unshakable case. Tomorrow, the world would know what Beatrice Sterling was. A knock at the door startled her. It was late, nearly midnight. Through the peephole, she saw a familiar face. Dr. Julian Vance, looking older and grayer than she remembered. She opened the door. Dr. Elara. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the modest apartment. We need to talk. How did you find me? I never stopped keeping tabs. Making sure you were safe. He sat heavily on the worn couch. I saw your name on the registered attendees for tomorrow's market event. E.L. Winters. Very clever. I'm going to expose her. I know. That's why I'm here. He pulled out a tablet and showed her a news article. Look at this. Below it, a photo of Bennett at a charity gala, looking distinguished and haunted. The article described the Bennett Sterling Foundation, which would provide full scholarships to disadvantaged students pursuing careers in technology. He never forgot you, Dr. Vance said quietly. He's donated millions in your name. He visits your grave every week. Talks to you like you're still listening. Elara's hands shook. He never suspected his mother. Beatrice told him you'd been depressed. Hiding pills. She showed him evidence of mental illness. He believed her because he loved her. Because sons want to believe their mothers are good. She poisoned me. She tried to kill our baby. I know. And tomorrow you'll prove it. Dr. Vance gripped her hands. But Elara, once you step onto that stage, there's no going back. Bennett will know you've been alive all this time. He'll know you let him grieve for 5 years. Good. Let him know what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you love. Dr. Vance studied her face. Is that what this is about? Revenge? Justice? There's a difference. Not to me. He sighed. I brought you something. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold wedding band. Bennett put this on your coffin before they closed it. I may have retrieved it. I thought someday you might want it back. Elara held the ring, remembering the day Bennett had slid it onto her finger. How he'd whispered that she was his forever. How she'd believed him. How wrong she'd been. Keep it, she said, handing it back. That woman is dead. I'm someone new now. Are you? Dr. Vance asked. Or are you still the girl who loved him? Elara didn't answer. She couldn't, because late at night, when Leo was sleeping and the world was quiet, she still remembered how Bennett's laugh sounded, how his hands felt in her hair, how he'd looked at her like she was the only person in his universe. Before his mother convinced him she was disposable. Tomorrow, she would face him, and he would see what his blind loyalty to Beatrice had cost them both. "Get some sleep," Dr. Vance said, heading for the door. "Tomorrow changes everything." "I know." After he left, Elara sat in the darkness, holding Leo's baby picture. In it, he was hours old. Tiny and perfect, his eyes searching for a father who thought both of them were dead. "Tomorrow," she whispered to the photo. "Tomorrow he learns the truth." In Seattle, Bennett Sterling sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the framed photo on his nightstand. Elara on their wedding day, laughing at something he'd said, her face lit with joy. He touched the glass. "I miss you. I'd give everything to have you back." Everything. If only he knew how soon he'd get his wish, and how much it would cost. Pike Place Market blazed with light and energy. The historic Seattle landmark had been transformed into a tech showcase. Massive LED screens displayed Sterling Tech's logo. Food vendors offered gourmet samples. Street performers juggled fire. 3,000 people packed the cobblestone streets, and on a raised platform overlooking it all stood Bennett Sterling. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elara's annual rent. His hair had more silver in it than she remembered. Lines creased his forehead, stress or grief, she couldn't tell. Beside him, Beatrice Sterling presided like a dark queen. Black designer dress. Diamonds that could fund a small country. A smile that never reached her eyes. Elara stood in the crowd, anonymous in jeans and a blue jacket. Leo clutched her hand, overwhelmed by the noise and spectacle. "Mama, there are so many people." "I know, baby. Stay close." She debated bringing him. Exposing a 5-year-old to this kind of trauma seemed cruel. But Dr. Vance had convinced her. Leo was the evidence Beatrice couldn't refute. One look at that face, and anyone with eyes would see the Sterling bloodline. Bennett was speaking now. His voice amplified across the market. 5 years ago, I lost the love of my life. My wife, Elara, believed in using technology to bridge divides, to lift people up. Sterling Tech's new platform honors her vision. We're launching an AI-driven educational system that provides free, personalized learning to underserved communities worldwide. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Elara's chest tightened. He'd built this in her name. Created something beautiful from grief. Had she been wrong about him? Before we unveil the platform, Bennett continued, I want to thank my mother, Beatrice Sterling, whose strength guided me through the darkest period of my life. Beatrice stepped forward, accepting the microphone. My son's resilience has been extraordinary. Losing Elara was devastating, but we Sterlings endure. We survive. We move forward. The words were barbed wire wrapped in silk. Elara's sympathy evaporated. This woman had poisoned her, buried her alive. Stolen 5 years of Bennett's life and Leo's childhood. And now she stood on that stage, basking in sympathy and praise. No more. Elara hoisted Leo onto her hip and began pushing through the crowd. People turned annoyed, but made way. She reached the security barrier. I need to get on that stage. The guard, built like a refrigerator, shook his head. Approved access only, ma'am. I'm Elara Sterling, his wife. The guard's expression shifted to pity. Ma'am, Mrs. Sterling passed away 5 years ago. If this is some kind of joke, it's not. She pulled out her ID. Sarah Mitchell. Not helpful. She needed another approach. Leo, perceptive beyond his years, wriggled free and ducked under the barrier. Leo, no. But he was already running, his small legs pumping across the open space toward the stage. The crowd gasped. Security moved to intercept. But Leo was fast and unpredictable. He scrambled up the stage stairs and stopped 3 feet from Bennett Sterling, staring up with eyes that were mirrors of the man's own. The market fell silent. Bennett looked down at the child who'd appeared from nowhere. His face went through several expressions: confusion, irritation, then shock as recognition slammed into him like a freight train. He knew that face. He saw it every morning in the mirror. Bennett's voice cracked. "Who are you?" "You?" The boy said it proudly. "I'm 5. "Who are you?" Bennett couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He looked exactly like the son Bennett had never known existed. The son who should have died with Elara. Beatrice moved forward, her face pale.
"Security! Remove this child immediately!"
But before anyone could act, Elara stepped onto the stage. The crowd erupted. Phones came out. Cameras swiveled. Journalists began shouting questions. Bennett stared at Elara like she was a ghost. "No." His voice was barely a whisper. "You're dead. I buried you. You buried a stranger." Elara's voice carried across the market, amplified by the microphone Leo had knocked over. "I've been alive this whole time, Bennett, living in the shadows, while you grieved a lie. That's impossible." But even as he said it, he was drinking in every detail. The way she moved, her voice, the scar on her left eyebrow from when she'd fallen while gardening. This was Elara. His Elara. Alive. "How?" he breathed. Beatrice stepped between them. "This is ridiculous. This woman is clearly an imposter, a gold digger after the Sterling fortune."
"Security!"
"I'm not going anywhere." Elara pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "Not until everyone sees what you really are." She plugged it into the nearest computer. The massive LED screens flickered to life. First image. The check. $1 million made out to Dr. Julian Vance. Beatrice's signature in flowing script. The memo line read, "For services rendered." Bennett's head whipped toward his mother.
"What is this?"
A forgery. Obviously. Second image, medical records. Elara Sterling. Admitted to Sacred Heart Hospital. Diagnosis, wolfsbane poisoning. Pregnant 12 weeks. Third video. Dr. Vance in surgical scrubs. Recorded the night he'd saved Elara's life. "My name is Dr. Julian Vance. Tonight, I was approached by Beatrice Sterling and offered $1 million to allow her daughter-in-law to die on the operating table. I'm recording this as insurance, as proof of what I've been asked to do. But I want it known I took the bribe, and then I saved Elara Sterling's life anyway. Because I'm a doctor, not a murderer." The crowd was in chaos now. Reporters screaming questions. Beatrice's face had gone from pale to crimson.
"Lies! All lies!"
"This is a coordinated attack by our competitors." Bennett wasn't listening to her. He was staring at Elara with eyes full of horror and dawning understanding. "She poisoned you." "Yes, my mother tried to kill you." "Yes, and our baby." Elara gestured to Leo, who stood between them, looking confused but brave. "Meet your son." Bennett dropped to his knees in front of the boy. Tears streamed down his face. "You're real. You're both real. We survived." Elara's voice was hard. "Despite your mother's best efforts." Bennett looked up at Beatrice, and for the first time in his life, He saw her clearly. Not as the woman who'd raised him, but as the monster who'd destroyed his family. You told me she had a breakdown. That she'd been hiding depression, taking pills. She was unstable. Bennett, I was protecting you, you mud.
Ah!
His roar silenced the market. You poisoned my wife and let me believe she was dead for 5 years.
She wasn't worthy of the Sterling name.
Look at her. She's the woman I loved. The mother of my child. The person you stole from me. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called them. Good. Beatrice looked around wildly, seeing her empire crumbling. The investors backing away. The board members conferring in urgent whispers. The cameras capturing every second of her exposure. She did what cornered predators do. She attacked. You think you're innocent? She turned on Elara, vicious.
You disappeared for 5 years. You let him suffer.
You kept his son from him. What kind of mother does that? It was the question Elara had asked herself 1,000 times. Bennett stood, moving between them. A mother who was afraid. A mother who thought she was dead. A mother who survived attempted murder. He looked at Elara, really looked at her. I am so sorry. For everything. For not protecting you. For believing her lies. For not being strong enough to stand up to her. Elara wanted to stay angry. Wanted to hold on to the rage that had sustained her through 5 years of struggle. But looking at Bennett's broken expression, at Leo watching his parents meet for the first time, she felt something else, grief. For the family they'd almost had. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Bennett said. I know I don't deserve it. But please let me know him. Let me be his father. Before Elara could answer, police flooded the stage. Beatrice Sterling, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Beatrice didn't go quietly. She fought, screamed, swore she'd destroy them all. It took 3 officers to restrain her. As they led her away, she locked eyes with Elara. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing. I'm alive, Elara said simply. That's more than you'll be able to say soon. The market erupted again. Questions, cameras, chaos. Bennett's head of security moved in. Sir, we need to get you out of here. But Bennett wasn't moving. He was kneeling again, eye level with Leo high. I'm Bennett. I'm your dad. Leo looked at Elara. She nodded. You're the prince, Leo said. From Mama's story. I guess I am. Though not a very good one. Mama says princes make mistakes, but they can fix them. Bennett's composure shattered. He pulled Leo into his arms, holding his son for the first time, sobbing into his small shoulder. Elara watched, her own tears falling freely. This wasn't the revenge she'd planned. This was messier, more painful, more real. This was what healing looked like. The Sterling Tech boardroom was silent as a tomb. 2 weeks had passed since the market confrontation. 2 weeks of media frenzy, legal battles, and Beatrice Sterling's spectacular fall from grace. She'd been denied bail. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Vance's testimony, the medical records, witness statements from Lorenzo and Samuel. Even the Jane Doe's family had been located and informed their daughter had been used in an elaborate deception. They'd filed a separate lawsuit. Beatrice was looking at 20, 5 to life. Bennett sat at the head of the table, looking like he'd aged a decade. The board members watched him with varying degrees of sympathy and calculation. Gentlemen, He began. Ladies, I won't waste your time. Sterling Tech's stock has dropped 37% since the incident. Our reputation is in free fall. The IPO has been postponed indefinitely. The CFO spoke up. We're hemorrhaging investor confidence. People are calling us a family of criminals. They're not wrong. Bennett's honesty startled them. My mother is a criminal, and I was blind to it. That's on me. With respect, sir. Taking responsibility doesn't restore shareholder value. No. But this might. Bennett pressed a button. The conference room screen lit up. Elara walked in. She wore a navy suit that made her look like she owned the world. Her natural hair was styled in elegant twists. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd survived hell and come out stronger. The board members shifted uncomfortably. This was the woman at the center of the scandal. The ghost who'd returned. Thank you for seeing me, Elara said. I know this is unusual. Mrs. Sterling, the CFO said carefully. What exactly are you doing here? Saving your company. She pulled up a presentation. For the past 5 years, I've been working as a tech consultant under the name E.L. Winters. Perhaps you've heard of me. Several board members' eyes widened. E.L. Winters was legendary in certain circles, a data architecture specialist who'd revolutionized systems for 3 Fortune 500 companies. That's you. The CTO looked impressed. Your work on the Morrison healthcare integration was brilliant. Thank you. I'm proposing something similar for Sterling Tech. She clicked through slides. A complete restructuring. Not just of your technology, but of your brand. You're not the company that covered up attempted murder. You're the company that exposed it, that chose truth over profit, that rebuilt itself with transparency and ethics. How? The CFO demanded. Be making me a partner. By publicly announcing that Bennett is stepping back from day-to-day operations to focus on being a father. By installing a new leadership team that represents the diversity Sterling Tech claims to value, but never actually practiced. She met Bennett's eyes. And by establishing a real foundation in my name. Not a vanity project, but a fully funded initiative that provides technology, education, and resources to communities that look like mine. The room was silent. You want us to give you power in this company? The CFO said slowly. After everything that's happened, I don't want anything. Elara's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I'm offering you a lifeline. Take it or watch Sterling Tech become a cautionary tale about unchecked privilege and corruption. Bennett stood.
She's right.
Everything she said is right. I moved to make Elara Sterling a full partner and Chief Innovation Officer, effective immediately. Seconded. The CTO said. This is insane. The CFO sputtered. She has no business experience, no. She rebuilt her life from nothing after my mother tried to murder her. Bennett's voice cut like glass. I'd say she's more qualified to run this company than any of us do. The vote was 8-3 in favor. Elara was in. Later, in Bennett's office, they stood on opposite sides of the room. So much space between them. So many wounds. Thank you, Bennett said, for not destroying everything. You could have. I considered it. Elara looked out at the Seattle skyline. For years, I fantasized about watching your empire burn. But then I realized that wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't give Leo his father. It wouldn't heal what was broken. Can it be healed? Bennett's voice was raw with hope and fear. Us. Elara turned to face him. I don't know. The woman you married died on that operating table, Bennett. I'm someone new now. Someone harder. Someone who doesn't trust easily. I understand. Do you? She moved closer. For 5 years, I raised our son alone. Worked 2 jobs. Went hungry so he could eat. While you lived in your penthouse and built foundations in my name without knowing if I wanted that legacy. I'm sorry. God, Elara, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back those years. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that when I needed you most, you chose your mother over me. Bennett flinched. You're right. I failed you. I failed our son. I failed everything that mattered, yes. You did. The words hung between them, brutal and true. But, Elara continued softly, Leo deserves to know his father. And maybe, if you prove yourself, if you show up every single day and do the work, maybe someday we can be friends. Friends. Bennett's laugh was broken. I want to be your husband again. That man is dead too. Elara's eyes glistened. The girl who loved him buried him with that stranger 5 years ago. Then let me meet the woman you've become. Let me earn her trust. Elara studied his face, saw the genuine remorse, the brokenness, the desperate desire to make amends. 1 dinner a week with Leo. Supervised at first. You prove you're reliable, we expand it. You prove you're trustworthy. Maybe someday he spends weekends with you. But my trust, that's going to take years, Bennett. If it ever comes back at all, I'll wait. His voice was fierce. However long it takes, I'll prove I'm different from the man who failed you. See that you do. She moved toward the door, then paused. By the way, there's one more thing. The Sterling tech platform you built in my name. I want full control of its direction. And I want 50% of its profits to fund the foundation. Done. I'm not finished. I want Lorenzo as the head of our employee wellness program. Dr. Vance as our chief medical consultant. And Samuel gets a full pension and the cottage he's been living in, with no strings attached. Anything else? Yes. Elara's smile was sharp. I want Beatrice's entire art collection sold at auction. Every piece. The proceeds go to domestic violence shelters and organizations that support women escaping abusive situations. Bennett's eyes widened. That collection is worth $50 million. It's been in our family for generations. Then it's time for it to do some good in the world instead of sitting in a mansion bought with blood money. For a long moment, Bennett struggled. That art collection was his mother's pride and joy. Selling it would destroy the last remnant of her legacy. Then he nodded. Done. All of it. Every demand. Elara opened the door. I'll have my lawyers draw up the contracts. Elara, wait. She turned. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you were dead, even when I tried to move on, you were always there. And I know I don't deserve another chance, but... You're right, she interrupted. You don't deserve one. But Leo deserves a father. So I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for him. The door closed behind her, leaving Bennett alone with the wreckage of his choices. 3 months later, Pike Place Market held another event. This time, it was the launch of the Bennett Sterling initiative. Free technology education for underserved communities. Mentorship programs. Scholarships. Everything Bennett had promised, now made real with Elara at the helm. She stood on the same stage where she exposed Beatrice, but today felt different. Lighter, Full of possibility instead of revenge, Leo sat in the front row between Bennett and Dr. Vance. The boy wore a tiny suit and a huge grin. He waved at his mother. Elara waved back, her heart full. 5 years ago, she said into the microphone, I was told I didn't belong. That my skin, my background, my very existence was a stain on someone else's legacy. Today, I'm here to tell every brown girl, every immigrant's daughter, every person who's been told they're not enough, you are enough. You are worthy. You are powerful. The crowd roared. And to those who tried to bury me, I'm still here. Stronger, smarter. And I'm using my voice to lift up everyone you tried to keep down. Backstage, Chef Lorenzo wiped tears from his weathered face. Samuel stood beside him, both men proud as fathers. After the event, Bennett approached carefully. That was incredible. Leo was so proud of you. Thank you for bringing him. Of course, I'd never miss this. He hesitated. Would you? Could we maybe have dinner? The three of us? I know a place that makes the best hot chocolate. Leo mentioned he likes that. Elara looked at this man who'd been her husband, her betrayer, her co-parent. Who was trying, genuinely trying. To be better, one dinner, she said. But I'm paying. Bennett laughed, the sound rusty but real. Deal. They walked toward his car, where Leo waited. The boy ran to them, grabbing both their hands. Can we be a family now? He asked with the blunt honesty of 5-year-olds. Elara and Bennett exchanged glances. We're working on it, buddy, Bennett said. It takes time. But you love Mama, right? And Mama, you don't hate Dad anymore. I don't hate him, Elara admitted. But love is complicated. That's okay. Leo swung their hands. I love you both enough for everybody. And maybe, Elara thought, that was enough to start with. That night, in a maximum security prison 3 hours away, Beatrice Sterling sat in her cell and plotted. They thought they'd won. They thought she was finished. But Beatrice had resources they didn't know about. Connections. Money hidden in accounts they'd never find. She would get out. She would make them pay. She would destroy them all. But that, she thought with a cold smile, was a story for another day. Outside the prison, the world moved on. Elara built her empire. Bennett learned to be a father. Leo grew up knowing he was loved. And somewhere in Seattle, in a grave marked with Elara's name, flowers bloomed despite the rain. Because even in death, even in lies, love found a way to survive. And sometimes, just sometimes, the buried rise again. Stronger than before, ready to reclaim everything that was stolen, ready to write their own ending. This time on their terms. THEND.